Hello friends, today we shall be discussing in this video 5 top priority policy issues which GST Council in its 20th June 2019 meeting should consider for the betterment and the good implementation of this GST law. My dear friends, since the date of its inception, there is a provision in the law, Schedule 1, item number 2, which talks about the cross charge, the supplies made between distinct persons. Those supplies made between distinct persons are subject to tax. Majority of the stakeholders in the economy could not comply that particular provision of the law. Considering the other relaxations which have been provided by the GST Council being kind enough and pragmatic enough for the smooth functioning of this good and simple tax GST, I suggest that this cross-charge provision for the financial year 2017-18 with effect from 1st July should be relaxed and a kind of dispensation should be provided not to apply this provision for the first year at least, in order to save the economy from the tax burden resultantly, which is not going to be available as the input tax credit also. Now the next issue, which is also a burning issue, which I would be requesting GST Council to please take cognizance of. There is a section 50 which talks about determination, calculation of interest on the late payment of taxes. In the history of indirect taxes, there has always been a phenomena that whatever input tax credit which is being paid by the recipient is allowed to the recipient in order to determine the interest on the remaining undue portion. But this law is actually asking us to pay the tax due on the late payment of taxes on the gross tax instead of the net tax, without allowing the set-off of input tax credit already paid by the recipient. In the recent judgment of the Honorable Telangana High Court in Mega Engineering, this has been reinstated by the Honorable Court that the tax is to be paid on the gross tax. Interest is to be paid on the gross tax. I earnestly request the GST Council that please take cognizance of this fact, because this has already been proposed, recommended by the GST Council on this 32nd GST Council meeting on 22nd December 2018, but no further action was being taken by the central government. This is going to create a long-lasting tax dispute in times to come. Third issue, which is again very important, when there is a blockage of credit under section 17 subsection 5 of CGST Act. There is a recent judgment of Safari Retreat Private Limited in case of Odisha High Court. The Honorable Court has said very categorically that where an asset is created, construction activity is being done, an asset is created, and that with investment, that asset is put to supply, and that supply is taxable, and that supply is being subject to tax. There is no breakage of supply chain, tax chain. So whatever input tax credit which is being paid to bring that asset into existence, which is bearing revenue which is subject to tax, should be allowed even if it is written in section 17 subsection 5 clause D. I would earnestly request that section 17(5) clause C and D should be reconsidered, because of the fact that if there is no breakage in the tax chain, whatever is created, the revenue out of that is subject to tax. So the credit should be allowed for the previous expense which has been incurred to bring into an asset into existence. Third pressing issue is about the advances which is being received on the supply of services, my dear friends. Supply of services, when advance is received, the time of supply takes place the moment advance is received. Now, if the advance is not adjusted for a longer period of time, that recipient has paid the tax on the advance received. but this I beg your pardon, the supplier has paid the tax on the advance received, but the recipient of the supply, which has only made the advance but not the final execution of contract, like supply is not made of goods or services, especially in case of services, because there is no tax on the advances received on goods. So in that case, the recipient is not able to take credit of the taxes paid by the supplier on the advances. This is also creating a kind of a problem, a blockage of working capital by the industry. So this is earnestly requested to please consider this issue in this GST Council meeting going to happen in 20th June. Last but not the least, the fifth pressing issue, the fifth issue which is very, very important, and it is going to create a everlasting, evergreening tax battle, tax litigation in times to come, is the availability of input tax credit for the recipient when supplier has not paid the tax. My dear friends, this has been always a phenomena in case of VAT also. When the supplier has not paid the tax, recipient in Delhi High Court, recipient has been allowed the tax credit if the purchases are bona fide, goods have been received, payments have been made. So in this particular situation also, when the supplier also is in your control, why the recipient should be made prey for this particular provision to recover the tax which is not being paid by the supplier who has actually collected the tax also. This is something which is going to create dissatisfaction amongst the trade, where the recipient has paid the tax. Then why should recipient be disallowed with the input tax credit and asked to compensate the exchequer for the mistake of the non-compliant supplier? Recipient is a tax compliant supplier, so why should it not be allowed the tax credit? My dear friends, these 5 issues I request the GST Council to please take cognizance of on this coming meeting, in order to save the economy from the undue hardship and actually bring this law to be a good and simple tax. Thank you very much for watching this. I feel that this could be a useful information for you. Thank you, friends.